Now, every time Bitcoin moves up, and also when I mention you should probably have some, a lot of people in the comments say it's probably too late to buy. But I'm going to talk about the obvious in the room of just dollar cost averaging an amount every single month or every single week, whatever suits you, and what it could maybe become even with some really ridiculous price moves slash crashes. Because I still believe, my personal thoughts, not financial advice, you will, with Bitcoin, do well. When you compare it to the likes of the S&P, gold, you probably will beat those even over the next coming years or decades. Now today, what I'm going to do, I'm going to showcase what I've been doing for the last year. You may know this if you're on my Patreon, but I have been dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin every single week, every single Sunday, and it's already done pretty good results considering majority of that time period has been pretty awful. And we'll see what happens over the next coming years and how it will grow and what I will do with it. So if you want to follow along, maybe subscribe, like, and comment. Now on the screen is my DCA portfolio. I have just moved it to a new wallet, so it doesn't have all the transactions in here, but this is what it is in terms of the average buy. And I have been doing this for about a year now, and I have made some mistakes. I've bought some random stuff thinking, you know what, I'll use altcoins, but I'm just going to focus pretty much on Bitcoin to showcase it. Now, the obvious in the room is, yes, we are at a pretty high price point, $115,284. And the total amount here, I don't have the full amount of Bitcoin in this yet, just because I will leave it in Swissborg for a bit, and then I will move it over when the fees are not as crazy, because there's no point doing a small amount when you've got the fees to go with it. But as you can see here, this is every single Sunday at 5 a.m, no emotion, no leverage, just consistency. I'm going to belt feed $120. Pretty much $500 over the course of the month if you're looking at it that way. And that's it. That's literally where we are. We're up 42% since the start of this, realistically, in just Bitcoin alone. You've pretty much done all right. You know, have you beaten the market? Kind of, yeah. And if you're in altcoins, let's not talk about that, but you get the idea. You have made some money, and it will gradually get better. If you've not yet read this book, I highly suggest you do it. Whether it's an audiobook or the physical copy, read it. And it will probably take a little bit of getting your head around. But the element around investing is very much consistency, time, and allowing things to just grow. I think a lot of people just look at Bitcoin and think, wow, it's really overpriced. And I think people had that same opinion 5 years ago with the S&P. Or even when gold was $2,000 not too long ago, people thought that's still really high. Now, the one thing that obviously the S&P and stocks have in terms of, differences on obviously with gold is Bitcoin has a fixed supply, 21 million. You could argue 20 million. You can argue probably a lot less with all the lost Bitcoin out there. Not to mention the halving cycles with the scarcity factor. That's a huge problem for money. Money. Remember that. Because when we talk about the contrast and the dilution and the difference between fiat versus, say, Bitcoin and the scarcity of said Bitcoin, it is absolutely massive. And Bitcoin, in my viewpoint, and whether this is your opinion or not, the hardest money we have got. Realistically, it is digitally hard and it won't change. That's amazing. So the psychology of being able to DCA into something that will not reprint or reproduce or be found on a freaking island randomly underneath someone's pirate closet. You get the idea with gold. But the situation is very simple. Demand is still there. Look at the ETF volume, for example. Now, on the screen, we're going to talk about the growth target. Basically, how many returns do you get on average with Bitcoin? Now, these are just a simulation, not financial advice, but this is based off a couple of numbers I've just plucked out the air. Now, it's going to become very, very important when you think, probably, more likely, the longer we go on with Bitcoin, this is going to reduce. But what I will tell you now is we are not even near these numbers yet, which is going to blow your bollocks a little bit. So even over 15 years, right? That is $500 invested every single month, which is $90,000. So imagine every single scenario on the screen here is $90,000 invested, turning anywhere between $200,000 to $1 million. Now, the thing with Bitcoin is we have some monumental crashes. Yeah, be aggressive in the crashes, boys and girls, and more importantly, maybe relax a little bit when it goes a bit parabolic. But the reality is very, very simple, as I've just alluded to it. The historic nature of these numbers may not come into fruition just yet for a good while. Why? We're nowhere near them numbers yet. Because even though, right, I disagree with what Michael Saylor says here in terms of he explains how you can 100x your money in 2045 because he thinks Bitcoin will be worth 13 million. Now let's hold your fucking horses a little bit, because the situation is those growth cargoes will get blown off course at any point, right? Just because they've happened in the past doesn't mean they'll happen in the future, right? That's a big situation. But ultimately what I'm saying is we are much higher than what I just put on the screen. That's important. So maybe don't go for what we're doing right now. Maybe add a dilution to that, which makes sense. But what basically Michael Saylor is saying is that we're going to stay at a certain number every single year forever. I don't think that's possible. But here we go. This is what Bitcoin produces. And it's very, very important to note this. So people forget, yes, you could argue a lot of things around the annual growth. We're averaging some pretty lofty numbers, right? But we've also got those multiple crashes. That is a bit of an issue. So those are a big problem in itself. But as you can see here, we've had some big boom and bust. But on average, we do generate some pretty lofty numbers. But when you put it into context, right, gold is roughly 7% growth cargo. When we talk about the S&P, 10%. So even if Bitcoin, say, only matches half of its history, it's going to win overall in terms of that situation. But that's amazing. In my personal opinion, we talk about like a rough average at the minute, 60% growth cargo, which is what it currently is now. When we talk about over the course of the last 10 years, that is boggling. Even over the last 5 years, it's still way beyond those predictions that I put. So even though we're clutching at a bit of straw here, the reality is, if you're aggressive in those crashes, if you're looking at the longer term effect of the scarcity numbers and you compare it versus gold and you compare it versus the S&P, there's a chance you probably do all right. Now, I know people don't really like the ETFs in a way because it's manipulating the play a little bit. It's more institutionalized. It makes it a bit more like fiat or more like the traditional markets. But ultimately, you kind of want to be in bed with that in a way if you want to make money. I mean, the thing with Bitcoin is you don't have to do much other than hodl, other than buy it, hold it, maybe don't buy as much when it's really, really ridiculously euphoric high, and maybe buy more when it's lower, right? It's like any investor. You go, oh, wow, okay, I like a crash. I'm going to buy some more stocks. Yeah, buy some more S&P, buy more gold, buy more this. Because you're kind of put into that situation where you kind of get conditioned to it. It just happens. But let's talk about something else in terms of investor psychology, because I think this is the important part. Because my viewpoint is simple. Most people, quit halfway through the bull and the bear cycle because they can't handle the drawdowns because they've over-risked and they not understand what they actually buy in. Basically, anything below Bitcoin, altcoins, we can just argue. You need to reinforce the obvious rule of consistency buys, no emotion, and long-term horizon. You may well want to pick Ethereum. You may well want to pick BNB, XRP, Solana. That's fine. But make sure you're picking the obvious, not the really unobvious, like sausage coin, for example, right? Because at the end of the day, you need to back the horses that are the most obvious and then put that time horizon to it and the consistency and just let it roll. But when we look at altcoins, and I'm going to talk about, the two shoulders here, you got one side of the fence on the comment section is we're going to get an alt season. It's going to be amazing. We're going to have 8 weeks of absolute amazingness. Yeah, that's happened in the past. And that might be worth it for some people, but is an 8-week, 12-week flurry worth it with all the pain attached? Probably not. Where on my side of it, and the shoulder that a lot of people now I think agree with, is I was lucky to go and change my thought process around altcoins at a certain point. I bought more Bitcoin at the lows. I bought some altcoins, but not as many as I normally would. And luckily I didn't, because that would have worked out pretty bad. But normally what would happen in my sense is I would be buying altcoins when dominance is high. I'm glad I haven't done that yet, because realistically I'd be destroyed. So yeah, when we look at the market behavior, more and more people are looking at Bitcoin versus, say, the altcoins at the minute. And as I say, yes, we may well get a mini alt season where some things will go up for a little bit, but how long will they stay for? I don't know. And most often people don't take profits anyways and they just get destroyed. By the way, on the screen, there's Blowfin here. There's a link to this below. You get 20% back on fees. It's open to the UK. And if you want to trade futures, you can. Just don't use high leverage. Just have a bit of fun with it, because what we're seeing in the UK is a lot of restrictions. So just be mindful of that. Get an account before it goes mental, because if Bitcoin does fly, you're probably going to see a lot more issues with exchanges again. And this exchange didn't crash when the flash crash happened, just saying. But if you want to follow along, I will be talking about this on my videos every now and again. I will be doing a lot more psychological content because I think it's important. I don't think anyone covers it. But the golden rule is simple. DCA weekly, ignore the noise, keep it super simple, and let scarcity and time do the heavy lifting, because with Bitcoin, it's already proven. I started it a year ago just to kind of prove a point. We're over a year now and I've already made 42, 43% by just putting money in. Wasn't even putting $500 a month in part of this period, which is kind of annoying in a way. I wish I did. But I will be buying more at the lows and probably buying less at the highs. Let's just build a portfolio and let's just see what happens. And if you do want to follow along, if you want to follow along with the videos and all the other live stream stuff, join Patreon. So yeah, let me know in the comments. How many BTC or Bitcoins will I get over the next couple of years? Let's see what happens, because yeah, we will get crashes. I will hopefully take a little bit off the table and buy low. But ultimately, I just want to grow that sats, and I've always maintained that over the last few years what I want to do. But $500 per month, what can we get? Well, we'll see, won't we? By the way, watch this video. May well help you with a lot with certain macro elements.